it's looking like temps might hit 30 in Busso. How is this going to impact people's marathon strategy?
Yeah, so keep in mind it's a real dry heat, and it's actually not that. Typically, you do get some really crazy days over there. I think last week it was in the 40s, but 30 degrees in Hawaii is very different to 30 degrees in Bustleton. And the temperatures goes up through the day, so you're not going to be. You don't need to factor in crazy amount of sweat loss early on in the bike, unless you're a heavy sweater, of course. But it's going to get really hard about halfway through the run in terms of heat. Well, not really hard, but it will be hot then. It's a hard one to manage. It's most races you can go like Hawaii, you can work out your sweat rate in those conditions. The interesting thing about Busso is because the temperature changes so much throughout the day, it does make it a lot more complex to plan your hydration. But in general, I say to anyone, drink to a schedule to start with. If you're relying on your thirst response, typically with the adrenaline, it might not be there to start. Or some people don't get a thirst response until they're already sort of mildly dehydrated. So while thirst response is a great way to stay alive, it isn't the best for optimizing your performance on a hotter day. So I think stay ahead of it, hydrate. It's actually okay to go to the toilet a few times if you need to. Better to overhydrate than underhydrate, provided you're not going crazy with it and putting,
the only thing I would add too would be and we probably sound like a broken record with this, but this is why speed-based goals just aren't a good idea. If you're coming from a cooler climate and you're saying you're doing your long runs at X speed, and then you go there and it might be 15 degrees hotter, you will be a bit slower. So relying on your heart rate that you've had in your previous training and using that on race day is always a good option too, to make sure that you're executing as well as possible.
It's so funny too. We love to get more scientific with our coaching, and people love it. But the longer I do this, the more I realize how important perceived exertion is as well. Yep. Some people, they love power on the bike, and power is a good tool. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably rather heart rate on the bike, because it factors in everything, or even in some ways, perceived exertion can be just as valuable, if not more so, in an Ironman. Power is just measuring exactly that, just the power you're putting through the pedals. It's not telling you whether it's whereas your heart rate will tell you, okay, it's hot. I'm working harder because it's hot, or I'm working harder because you overswam the last 2 kilometers of the swim course. So I'm always in a battle with my athletes to wear their heart rate strap in the race, because if you got it, that's where power is really handy, where you can constantly compare the two and make decisions based off what's going on between both of them.
And if you've done all your training with power, heart rate, and using perceived exertion as a key, like as a cue, and you can then say, this is how I feel and that's what my numbers are, then on race day you can use the word that you use. I think that's awesome, is a tool. If you're using power as a tool, heart rate as a tool, but the main tool really on race day a lot of the time is perceived exertion, and you're just using those two to key off, then you're going to probably get the most, you are going to get the best execution on race day.
Funnily enough, probably the reason some athletes I don't like perceived exertion with, Steve McKenna is one of those. Some people just have no clue that they're actually really suffering, and it's probably why they're part of the reason they're so good. But he'll be telling me that, I'm going to do this little local race just for a bit of a tune up, and normally I have to agree with him. Or I don't get a choice. And then I'll look at the photos and he's got his mouth open. He's just smashing himself. And he tells me that he did it, in second gear. And he probably feels like it's second gear, but some people can really suffer. So perceived exertion, really handy for most sensible people, just not good for total idiots.